Okay, should we start? Thank you so much for being here. I just found out this morning that this is the first year that News Laundry has used AI to program sessions, which means session about technology happens at the same time as a session with Swara Bhaskar. So you guys have self-selected yourself, so thank you so much for being here. But interesting stat, 40% of all people get their breaking news from some form of social media. Just a quick show of hands, how many of you get your first glimpse of breaking news through social media? Okay, that's actually more than 40%. I think clearly the other 60% probably are not on social media. So I think the number's a lot higher, and I think it speaks to the session we're going to have today about fantasy, sci-fi, and the future. And we've got a panel of thinkers, doers, and people with a lot of opinions on how technology and automation is going to change the newsroom. So I'm going to start maybe just with a quick round of introductions. And if you could introduce yourself and perhaps give us a quick line or two about your experience with automation and tech and bringing it into the newsroom. Maybe we can start from Rajat.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Rajat Nigam. I'm Group CTO for Network 18 Media. We deal in television broadcasting and digital products. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm happily surprised in the morning, the number of audiences is more than the number of panelists, which is an encouraging thing. Thanks for that. Well, the subject remains very, very interesting. It's actually affecting day-to-day life, not only professional, but even the personal life. I look forward for a very, very interactive and useful fruitful session on this. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kawaljit Singh Bedi. I'm the Chief Technology and Product Officer for NDTV. I've been with the company for all my life. I started as an intern and I'm a CTO now, so spent all my life in this one company. On your question about automation and using machine learning and AI for newsrooms, I think NDTV has converged into a single newsroom where both the digital and broadcast teams work together. And we use a lot of technology to help them get news faster, put it out, and we can have some discussions around that today.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rahul. I'm from Google. I lead the partnerships and the news vertical at Google. I very closely work on the Google News Initiative. And to your point, the question on technology and news, I think that was our initiative in 2018, where we've actually said that we'll get best of Google to the news industry and work with our partners from machine learning, content recommendation, advertising, and the work. So hopefully we can talk a little about that.
Hi, I'm Kavya. So I am a software engineer turned journalist, but I'm still an engineer, and by that I mean my job can be best described as an editorial technologist. So that's there are a lot of functions in newsrooms that require both technology as well as journalism skills, like data analysis and data visualization, presenting stories, and so on. So. And a lot of tasks can be automated in these fields and things that happen in a day-to-day basis. So that's what I've been doing. My last newsroom job was at Vox.com, but currently I'm at Harkin, which is a startup based out of Chicago, and we work on a product plus consultation model for improving audience engagement.
Hi everyone, I'm Rashmi. I'm the Vice President of Engineering at Quintype Technologies currently. I've been in tech for about 20 plus years. I'm an engineer at heart as well. I was in the Silicon Valley, majorly at Adobe Systems for about 15, 16 years. Worked in various verticals, including video publishing, as well as extracting metadata out of video so that you can provide more contextual ads for videos. I've also done a stint with a startup as a co-founder with a fintech startup. I think this topic is really interesting. We have ways to go in news, applying AI and ML in news. So looking forward to the conversation.
Okay, so let's jump right to it. And maybe just to set the context with everyone here, maybe talk about a few specific use cases where all of you are already deploying technology and automation, maybe just to, for us to kind of get a glimpse of what's already being done. And so maybe Kawaljit, you could start and maybe give us a quick rundown of what you guys are already doing.
I'll give you two examples of where we are using some of these machine learning and AI in NDTV newsrooms to help our journalists and reporters. So one of them is trying to extract metadata, like Rashmi mentioned, out of video. So what we are trying to do is twofold. So one is we run all our video through, a process where we are trying to transcribe them. We are trying to go back in time and try to transcribe all our videos to get context out of them, which editors who had meta tagged them many years back may have missed. Finding out quotes in videos that we may have not put in our metadata. So we are trying to transcribe them. It's not 100%, but it helps our newsroom find out videos that they may have lost. And I'll give you an example. When Mrs. Sheila Dixit passed away a few weeks back, someone from the newsroom remembered that they had done an interview where she had said something in particular about driving on the streets of Delhi. And we were trying to find out that video. So it was easy for us to look for the video because of the transcription available for that. So that's one of it. Then you can also do things which are not very useful right now, but I think it will improve over time, which is something called scene detection. So you can figure out that it was a speech on a dais in a political rally. You can identify things which, like you shouldn't be using as a meta tag, like who was in the scene beyond the main, I shouldn't say protagonist, but the main reason that that video got encoded. So that's one example of, trying to make our own content more useful for our newsroom. And the other one which we use very often is a technology by Google called Jigsaw, which basically looks at user-generated content, basically comments which come on our websites for moderation. So we get hundreds and thousands of comments every month on stories that we publish on our websites, and we normally push out comments only which go through moderation. It's a lot of work for people to go through every comment. So Jigsaw is a Google product which actually figures out the toxicity of the comment. Works only on English right now. We're speaking to them if we can do it in other languages. But it tries to figure out words which are toxic, even not just the words, but sentences or the way they have been written. And if we have put our own parameters, if it's more than, let's say, 90% toxic, then we automatically reject it. So this has been improving over time also. It reduces the burden on our editorial people to be moderating, and it gives a better user experience for people who come to the site and read the comments which go along it. So these are some of the examples that we use around machine learning and data.
Sure, Rahul, just building on the conversation about Jigsaw, and maybe you can talk to a few case studies that you have, but I want to start off with a question around Jigsaw specifically. Where do you draw the line between auto-moderation versus putting in some, again, there's a lot of conversation today about freedom of speech and machines sort of blocking out specific thoughts.
Okay, so let's take a step back, okay? For 3 years back when Sundar came as the CEO at Google, he made out a public statement that we are going to be an AI ML first company, right? So every product of ours is basically using AI and ML in a huge way, right? And if you just simplify it, AI ML is all about processing. So, I mean, it's not a new concept. I think it was back in 1950s when there was a professor who actually came up with the concept of getting train machines to do mathematical problems, right? But today it's today it's possible because now we have the capability to process this data. In the last 5 years, so 95% of the global data available actually is generated in the last 5 years, right? And now today we have the capability with the computing power to now get a lot of inferences out of this data, right? So that's just on the pure play of where we look at as a company. But when we come closer to the newsroom, that's my personal opinion also, that I fundamentally believe that we as humans have two major challenges right now, right? There's the environmental change, and number two is misinformation, right? Misinformation is just not in India. Across the globe, this is a huge, huge issue. So we categorically use AI, ML, deep models to actually figure this out, right? Where is this information coming from? And many of you would have read even on YouTube, right? So there is a lot of misinformation which happens on our own platforms, right? And we use AI, ML, and having said that, we also use a lot of human capital also, right? So it's just not that the machines are doing everything. There is machines and there is humans which are actually doing this. So misinformation is one which we are really looking at.
On the topic of misinformation, there was a series of videos going around which showed a bunch of world leaders singing along. I don't know if you guys have seen this. They were singing Imagine by John Lennon, and you had Putin and Trump and all of these guys singing. So the idea of how AI-based tech, especially with deepfakes and video, and the concept of misinformation, I guess, is the double-edged sword of technology, right? So Kavya, in your experience, do you think today, and you've spoken a lot about the editorial technologists, right? So if you could kind of maybe tell us a little bit about how the role of the editorial team, I suppose, is changing with technology, and also maybe touching upon whether the concept of fake news can actually be solved through this.
Okay. So newsrooms have traditionally had this divide between people who create the content and people who deliver the content in the product, right? And your product can be anything. It can be a website, it can be a newspaper, it can be a video feed, whatever be it. And when you want something new and shiny, you just throw it over the wall to the tech folks and hope that it happens. Right? There's a lot lost in translation. And having been an engineer and now a journalist, I can say without hesitation that being good at making product decisions does not equip you to make a good journalistic decisions. And newsrooms are starting to realize this more and more. And it is a marketplace where you innovate or die. And that's other part of the problem. Because product teams have their own roadmaps, have their own priorities, and your request to make this new shiny thing is just one issue in their whole pipeline. So you might not get what you want immediately, and you might not get to experiment as much as you want. And from that, this need is where the editorial technologist is, this new hybrid role of editorial technologists have come out. It's AI and machine learning as it's in some senses still buzzwords in the space of editorial technology, because there's so much more we can do with the old school of technology, with not necessarily machine learning technology. But there's a lot of work happening there as well. And as far as your question about fake news, something that I'm actively trying to do is avoid using the phrase fake news, because it's loaded, it's politicized, and it's something that's weaponized by authoritarian regimes and populist governments to discredit media. Right? So it's false information, even though it doesn't have the same ring to it. And as you said, there's misinformation, that is somebody is putting out data or putting out something that they don't know is not true. And then there is disinformation, which is somebody actively making up lies and passing it around. And both of these don't necessarily originate in the media, and there is not much we can do except debunk things. And that a lot of the onus of that lies with the distributing platforms like Google and Facebook and Twitter. And there's a lot of talk happening, and I think we need to see more proof. I'm sure there's stuff happening in these tech companies, but yeah, I don't think people are convinced yet. And right now, unfortunately, the tech industry does not have the goodwill. People are not going to take your word for it. And the third kind of fake news or false information is the malinformation. So this is what the newsrooms can work with. Malinformation are things that are inherently true, are small nuggets of fact which by itself are true, but then when used in a context, they can push an agenda that is not true. So this is like taking correlation to imply causation, taking a small set of data and extrapolating it to mean something entirely different, or taking a news story that we published 10 years ago to push an agenda today, say some, for mob violence, you can use data, a story that happened a few years ago to say, there was a retaliation and kind of stir up tensions. So I think news media, we really have to think of it as, once we create content, we really don't have control on where it goes and how it's going to be used. There's a good example of how Guardian has done some good work in trying to make it clear by bookmarking their social media images with years of the publication, making sure that people know that when it was published and whether it's an archived content, and more or less. And the TLDR version of it is, yes, the false information campaign can be combated against, but we'll never be able to completely squash it. We'll be able to deal with the scale of it and reduce the impact of it.
So just a quick show of hands. I think you brought us some very interesting points about false information, sourcing, and the distribution being different, right? And also I think there's a little bit of a thread there about bias perhaps maybe in the media as well. So maybe just a quick show of hands. How many of you actually feel that media today is biased one way or the other? Okay, so that's a significant portion of people. And I suppose the follow-on question from that is, can automation of news and technology perhaps bring us back to the middle where we're talking about events in a far more unbiased manner, or for that matter, presenting news to a viewer, so the flip side is presenting news to a viewer which actually sort of amplifies a bias that already exists. Rashmi, I don't know if do you want to take that one?
So yeah, it's an interesting question, and I was very tempted to raise my hand as well. But I think, as far as I can see, technology, automation, AI, ML will help us sort of automate, the shorter form content, and that may be less biased. But I do think that, that's how journalism is going to evolve. People are going to go more and more into quality content eventually, which has to be still written. Whether it's going to be biased or not, I think is influenced a lot by political views. So that's out of the technology space, and I don't know if that can be solved through tech.
Right. Rajat, I think, could you perhaps also maybe, if that's something that you have a view on, but also talk us through the evolution of television and broadcast media and how you're seeing automation changing that?
As it can be seen, I'm from a earlier generation because of my age, and what I can, and I've been lucky to witness this change actually, the way it has happened. And as Rahul said, artificial intelligence is nothing new. It has been there, and I recall I'm from UPSC 1989 batch, and there was a question in 1989, write a short note on artificial intelligence. And it was never there in any of the curriculum, but it was there. So it has been there. Now it's more of a term which is used. Perhaps I would tend to say it is overused, because artificial intelligence is, again, like, it is one of the tools. The moment we start seeing it as a tool, it rests all the debate. Now, how the news has changed, to your question, from broadcast, it has moved to narrowcast and to unicast. It's a role reversal. Earlier, one would want to follow the news or run about what you wanted to know. Now the news follows you. What is that required? So that's a good role reversal which has happened. Talking about broadcast, news channels, as the news doesn't break on news channels now. So news channels have become views channel. So there is nothing like news channel, because it has already broken in social media. We all said some time back. So now the biased part on unbiased part erupts out of that views channel per se. So now artificial intelligence, or for that matter any technology, can help you to increase your efficiency on that part of it. You cannot rely on that to generate your view or generate your content. So news, again, like newsrooms has been going through different phases of automation. It's like earlier it used to be manual scripting. You have to print out, you have to type, get it out. Then the computers came in. There was a newsroom computer system. We used to call it, even today we call it NRCS, which runs on in the newsrooms, equivalent to CMS of digital world. So once that came in, that was again like automation, which actually helped you to increase your productivity. The same artificial intelligence is helping us now. Simple way of a spell check in the native is that a spell check is a native of artificial intelligence. That was a tool which helped you to do the checking of the spelling when you are typing or when you are saying something. So it's same. So it has moved. What has happened is, with all sort of regards to the fraternity, I would say the media industry has been reactive to all this change. We all saw that internet has come. Internet has been the biggest innovation. If you look back, it has been the biggest innovation, and it still continues to be. Now that was coming, the technologies were changing. Media organizations, they reacted that how that was happening, because of which what has happened, the platforms have taken over the news publishing part. Again, like Google, Facebook, they are the biggest news publisher today. Not the the traditional news organization. That is wherein the gap, and that is wherein I see Kavya, and similar to Kavya's role, wherein the tech-savvy journalists are lacking in that newsroom, which is a field which needs to be enhanced.
So do you see the concept of a media house or a newsroom or the team itself changing to include more people with a core technology background, to what Kavya was saying earlier? Do all of you guys think that would happen?
Yeah, it has to be. It's a question of survival. So one is that I, as a journalist, I need to enhance my skill set. With the changing time, with the fast changing tech, I need to be tech-minded journalist rather than being a total the talent that I used to carry traditionally.
I want to sort of just go back to that previous question of whether all of you think technology will actually help amplify a certain bias or thought that let's say a media organization wants to propagate, or do you think it'll help neutralize it and allow people the opportunity to come back to a bit more of a balanced view? Kawaljit, Rahul, do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I think Rajat was right in saying it's a tool. I think the bias comes from the editorial side of it, and they can use the tool whichever way they want to, bend it. So I think even if the tools show you are biased, they will overrule it, right? So,
right.
so it's just a tool.
I just wanted to add to that. Yes, AI and ML will be able to recognize biases much better, I'm guessing, and call that out, but I don't know that will change things.
So when we look at it, right, and fighting, this is a cat and mouse game, right? So firstly, machines are not creating the misinformation, right? There are obviously people behind it. So there are, and then yes, it gets amplified. So that's where it gets amplified. So it's currently, yes, we are in a very, very reactive situation. We are basically trying to, so at least I can talk about Google and from some of the publishers I work with. A lot of us are currently like reacting to the situations. A lot of times this information is not even intentional, right? And there have been some cases like that. But it'll get faster. We will be able to get those content down faster. But having said that, will we stop the production of that content? I don't think so. And that's what Kavya also said, right? So I would agree with that.
Okay. So, there's very interesting case studies that are out there. Of course, the New York Times has spoken about their editor product. There's the Heliograph by the Washington Post, which automates content production. Is that something that's happening in newsrooms in India as well? Is there automation of story writing or content production that's happening today at both of your organizations, for example?
Shall I? Yeah, so with the time, the role of technology has been increasing. So it used to be a support function some time back. Now it moved to enabler, and actually it is at the driving stage today, which is actually the sensitive part. Technology should not be the driver for media organization. It should be enabler.
But you're saying it is the driver today?
It is tending towards that.
It is
tending towards that, and that is wherein the need to recognize that, put a pause to that, put a punctuation to that, enhance the editorial skill for which is paramount to a media organization, and do that bit of it. Now, the stories, yes, we are using technology to generate stories. We use these stories, as Kawaljit said, to use face recognition to search the content. You could do all those things. You could do a technology to generate video packaging quick, fast. So that is what the end objective is, not to write the content. That is wherein we need to look back.
So actually, I'm going to modify the question slightly for you, Kawaljit, because I know this is something that you've spoken about before, which is building on Rajat's point about technology being the driver than the enabler. And is there a risk of people trying to optimize for technology versus trying to use it wisely?
Yeah, I actually feel very strongly about this. So just to step back, both TV and print actually are limited to TV 24 hours of broadcast, and print those many pages, right? You can't have a 2-kilogram newspaper. So you have some restriction on the real estate these two command. So like New York Times had this, I think they still carry this motto, all the news that's fit to print, right? That's not the same for digital. I mean, you can generate content, whatever is not fit to print actually comes on digital. And that's because it's driven by the model on which digital works, which is ad supported, right? Like I don't think subscription and that's a separate topic in itself. But it's ad-driven world for Indian news publishers right now, both in every model, right? Print, TV, and digital. But on digital, it's the clicks which drive the inventory, which drives the revenue for a company. So what is happening is over time, everyone, including reporters, are being driven towards this model of how to generate more clicks. And this is fueled by technology today. So when young, impressionable journalists join us, their resume carries words like that they're good at SEO. I mean, like, this is driving reporters to learn things like SEO optimization because that can generate more click, which actually is welcomed by editors and news journalists on the floor, that they know what SEO is. They know that if they have to write a headline for a sports match, they have to say India versus Pakistan : and then is where the actual lead should come in. This kind of changing the way people write headlines to suit platforms is what is the downside of technology. And there are so many great things. For example, we use what is called headline testing, right? We use hero image testing. Like when you put out a news item, you actually put 2 images with that story or 2 headlines, and then based on which gets more click, that becomes the headline which will be shown to the rest of the public which will come. So these are technologies available to us, but are being gamed to get more clicks. And when you go down that route, it's like the dark side of technology, which I'm not happy seeing. And you can see like these Chinese aggregator apps which have come to India. I don't want to name them, but you know them. Like look at their home pages or the screen when you open the app, like the kind of stories which are there. Like no self-respecting news publishers wants that, but that drives the highest number of clicks. So that's what shows up, right? Like if you start changing journalism towards clickbait headlines or using technology to drive it, and that's what is happening. So that's the dark side, which I'm not happy, and we try to keep that aside, right? Like what's trending, what news should be upfronted on the homepage should be driven by editors and people who understand feature news, right? Not by algorithms. So I mean that's something we should think about.
Guilty of clicking on the clickbait headlines sometimes. Now that's so. I think so. The AI on the corner tells us we have 5 minutes for Q&A. So if we have questions in about 5 minutes. So Rashmi, that brings me to something that is a very relevant point today, where media organizations today are literally at the brink of extinction because revenue models have been threatened. So on one side, you need to optimize for clicks and optimize for monetization. On the other side, without compromising on the quality of news and stories, right? And in your experience, some of these tools are, for example, I guess what you've been working on helping publishers get access to. So where do you draw the line with personalization and recommendations versus actually maintaining journalistic quality?
Yeah, so I mean, to begin with, I agree with certain points that Kawaljit mentioned. One being that, we are very SEO focused. A journalist ought to be writing good quality content. And I also agree that it's the monetization models that are sort of pushing us towards it. Unfortunately, technology is right now driving these things instead of enabling media companies. But you also look at, I think the US experienced this a few years back, and you see people like Washington Post, New York Times actually investing in their own technology for content moderation, automated generation of content. There's also this whole smart speaker side of things, where people want news in a very short snippet. And I think people are still trying to figure out the monetization models around all of this. I think that the media, along with technology, could drive different monetization models, and that ought to help sort of break out of this whole SEO and ad clicking sort of behavior. And I do think that we'll get there. I think that we have a certain amount of data today. We are trying to optimize our AI and ML algorithms, and we will continue to do that. That said, it is also up to media to sort of experiment with these different models. So I feel a tie-up between the two is very important to have, so that we can experiment like paywalls and such, but with sort of quality content, comment moderation, those kind of things. You sort of read certain articles about content moderation, how actually New York Times is seeing better quality consumers, right? Good quality comments where people are engaging online with content. So I do see hope there. I think things will change for sure. I think we started off with the chaos, lots of digital content available to everybody for free. This happened with entertainment as well. The entertainment video, they didn't know how this would work. Would people just watch video on YouTube all the time? But you do see all of these content aggregators, Netflix, Amazon Prime come up, who charge you, and people are willing to pay for that, right? I do think that some model will evolve, either an aggregation model or some other model where media publishers are able to monetize their content and actually focus on the content.
But until then, we're going to optimize for clickbait. And yeah, please.
Right. So I think we should stop pretending that the moment we start caring about, as content creators, the moment we start caring about how a content is delivered, our art is corrupted, right? Because the idea of build it and they will come is no longer valid. There's so much content out there. Just because you created good content doesn't mean somebody's going to come see it. So SEO is just means to put it out to the people. You're not pandering to people. You're just making your content being easily readable, because the fact is most people are not going to come to your publication to the homepage. They are going to find you on social media. They're going to find you on Google. And you have to help these platforms surface your content to relevant audience. And so, yeah, I don't think that SEO necessarily focusing on SEO is a bad idea, but I do agree with Kawaljit in the sense that we should stop hiring people for buzzwords. Just because somebody says, I can do SEO, doesn't mean that you should hire that person. You need to know what that really means. And I've had this experience. The first journalism job that I interviewed for, I was asked to list all the JavaScript libraries I knew. And it just was a memory game at that point, because if you know JavaScript, you just learn a new library. There isn't any magic in there. But yeah, so there's definitely that hiring and promotion aspect of buzzwords is a bigger problem.
Just to add, just to close this one, I think, so we all talk about this clickbait and this content, but the fact is how many of them actually make money? It's still the premium publishers who do make that, the advertisers, and there is a big shift which is happening in advertising. I said I'm not going to pitch, but that if you actually think of like programmatic, which is coming up, now advertisers want to know what your audience is all about. Right? It's very quickly that it's moving away. It's going to viewability. What is the interaction on your pages, and how are they interacting with your content? And that's why all this clickbaity kind of content just does not monetize. Yep. Yes, we all talk about it. Oh, it's all over. It's getting distributed. But do they make money? No. So the fact is, the advertisers are much smarter, right? They will basically come off and they will target people who actually go for great quality content, who are actually interacting with your website, who have great product experience, and they have high visibility of the advertising. So I genuinely feel that with programmatic coming in, how ad dollars are moving to programmatic, a lot of this will get cut down. Yep. Because they only want quality.
Any questions out in the audience? And I'd request you to please stand up while you ask your question. So we get a few mics. Maybe to the lady in the third row.
Hello, everyone. First, I want to say that, digital and broadcast, I think, have very different audiences. Broadcast is largely driven by the Hindi consumers. Digital is driven by English consumers. So where do you see, this is to all the publishers here, where do you see Hindi search words and Hindi content generating more clicks than English? This is one question. I think Rashmi and Kawaljit both can answer this. Second thing, does digital help you be even bolder than your existing broadcast? Like, I can say this for NDTV for sure, that they are bold on broadcast but bolder on digital. And Rahul, you can also help us if have you seen any sort of traction between such publishers there?
And if you could maybe throw in an angle on technology or automation that relates to that question.
Maybe just that one fact that you mentioned, that broadcast is driven by Hindi audiences and digital is not, so that's changing rapidly. I think I saw it in one of Google's presentations, 9 out of 10, every YouTube consumer consumes it in non-English. We have seen the growth. We have added 50 million users in 1 year on our non-English sites. So that's changing quickly. If it is not today, it will, because internet was driven by English-speaking audiences till Jio came, lowered the prices, got in new users, and they're all non-English speaking. So that's a big difference for us.
And then to answer your question on sort of non-English content, we as a platform, we actually support multiple languages, right? We do have publishers in other languages, like other South Indian languages and such. So we have actually made it sort of mandatory in our sort of tech that we support these multiple languages, and we are not sort of influenced by English per se. And then it's up to sort of the publishers to leverage that.
Yeah, I can just to close that one on. So what's happening is, to Kawaljit's point, the next 3 years of the internet is going to be only Indian languages. In the last year, what the number of people who've actually come online, 80% of them have been actually Indian language. So there is going to be a big shift. Yes, languages have, in the last 2 years I've seen with publishers in India, we've really taken it very seriously. There's a lot of content there's a lot of companies and a lot of content producers are actually making content for Indian languages. And we as a company also, we believe that's the future for internet.
And is the technology ready to support that vernacular though?
Yeah, it's, I mean, from our perspective, it's taken time. I mean, it's 20 years, Google search was in English, right? It's just, we've started dabbling with Hindi search for the last 4 years. So 4 years back when we launched, it was a terrible experience, horrible. In fact, now it's still not superb, but it just gets better. But languages are very difficult. It's not so easy to solve languages, but having said that, the consumption on languages is really, really high. Most of our language queries come on voice. So they're not, so that's, so.
Very interesting. This gentleman in the first row, please. So if you could just stand while asking a question.
From the publishers and the techno side, there's a lot going behind the technology side. From the user stroke news consumers, things are changing. Like earlier we used to have the newspaper, now the views channel. So we are shifting mostly to the mobile devices. And the consumption out there, right now, I go to a Facebook or I go to YouTube, etc. I try and suppose want to watch something on Media Rumble. But there will ad which will come and then it will push. So the question from the viewer side, is technology now defining what I consume? Just because you have found me getting interested. So are my messages, which I want to read, being defined by the platform?
Okay. Rajat, if you want to take that.
Well, actually it is the other way around. It's technology is actually gratifying you. It is delivering you the news, what it matters to you, in which you are interested in, rather than the other way. Earlier it used to be a unidirectional communication with the interactivity, with the pattern of your consumption. It recognizes, the technology recognizes what are your subjects, and it delivers you. So it is the other way around, not that the technology is defining what you should be consuming.
Yeah, I can add to that. So yes, I think technology, to some extent, the AI, ML bits, whatever sort of level they are at today, they determine the recommendations and things. But I, as a consumer, have very often found that what they're sort of recommending is not what I want to consume, right? So I personally think that this is going to go to a different level. So right now, what you have is AI, ML doing their thing in the back end and presenting something to you, hoping that that gets more interactive, right? So in some form, either voice or something else, that you don't have to sort of always see what the engine thinks you want to see, as well as those algorithms themselves will evolve and be able to target your recommendations much better than they do today.
So that's interesting. So you're saying that the recommendation that you see, at least today, doesn't work as well, and yet everybody is using it. So we're just sort of in that phase where we're
I think so. I mean, it gets it 50-50, I think. And a lot of times I'm actually switching, and this is not what I want to see.
So machine learning is, it's to really demystify, it just learns from the data you provide, right? And the data you have provided, because so far what we have tracked is page views. And machine learning is just optimizing to get more page views. the thing is, it doesn't really care about the breadth of content, and so you end up seeing the same kind of content over and over again sometimes. So you create these information bubbles, and that's been a problem with these recommendation algorithms. There has been, again, a lot of people have realized and recognized that as a problem, and there has been, as Rashmi said, there's been a lot of effort in changing these algorithms and trying to put in more signals into the data so the recommendation engines get better.
Okay. Maybe we'll go at the back, if that's okay. Gentleman on the left. So if you could stand up so you're on the camera.
My name is Piyush. If you talk about the biasness and how does technology sort of helps or sort of resists it, I just want to flag this question about, we've been talking about how technology is ideologically neutral or per se, but if you were to look at the series of events that have happened in the last few years, for example, what happened in Sri Lanka or Myanmar or in Brazil for that matter, and how do we then, for example, because all the platforms are designed to incentivize engagement, right? And more of it. And they've been, like, the record shows us that they're incentivizing a certain kind of content. And I'll give you, like, I wouldn't name the parties at first, but it's very evident from, if you go for an ad on Facebook for a particular party's ad, you'll be charged this amount of money, like, say, X money, but if you go for, like, if you want to put an ad for another party, you'll be charged 2X amount of money. So in that context, how do we then sort of navigate the platform's role in all of it, like in dissemination of information or disinformation? Rahul, you talked about how if the content is not credible enough, they don't get the advertiser anymore. But my question is also with the fact that are these people who are peddling misinformation on these platforms, do they really care about advertising? I mean, the end they want to achieve can be political or can be of a different thing. And lastly, my question is to the people who come from the journalism background is previously when you had broadcast or print, you said that technology was an enabler, sort of trying, helping you to reach out to a bigger audience. But now you have, like, the nature of the beast is totally different. Google knows your reader more than you know your reader, or Facebook knows your reader more than you know your reader. So in a sense, they are playing a different set of roles. You don't know your readership as well as they know it. So in that sense, how do you navigate your relationship? Because they're also taking your pie away of the advertising, which wasn't the case previously. So yeah.
So I think there were about 5 questions there, but maybe let's start with the, maybe let's start with the role of the platform.
I would say all of them should be replied by one guy from Google here.
No, I think
the questions are to him.
So maybe the role of the platform and
to the first point, I think let me just get the questions correct. The first point was about the bias, right? So as a platform, it's as a technology, we're not creating that information, right? So I don't know what's the motive, right? You said people who are peddling, what are they in for the money or what are they in for? I don't know, right? I mean, that's for this group to answer. I mean, I'm not the one who's creating content, right? So that is one. The second part is, you spoke about monetization, right? Number one, the fact is that do we know more the user than the publishers? Having said that, publishers know as much because they have the kind of information they have. Okay, we have a bigger database. All right, but there are tools there to actually know, and we provide enough tools, and there is enough information there. So publishers have enough of information, number one. Number two, are we taking away you mentioned, are we taking away the advertising pie? I don't think so. If you actually look at it, so we have I don't know if you know about our products, but we have many products where we work with publishers very closely and we help them monetize. And all these products are on commission basis, so we actually charge a commission, and a bulk of that, what we monetize, actually goes to the publisher itself. So that's what all our models work like that.
Yeah, on the money side, he's right. I mean, we work like frenemies where actually the problem is the advertising pie is being hogged by the 2 big companies, the total advertising pie. But of course, where we work together, where we use a lot of Google tools to surface ads for our users. They charge a very small commission, and the most of it is passed on to us. So on that, on the question of bias, I would say, the bias, like you mentioned, is built by the platforms for that metric, like you said, engagement, right? So they are building the biases for the kind of metric that they want. So if they want more engagement, the biases are built to create or surface content which will generate more engagement. So so that's why the whole, the ecosystem is like that. The SEO is, and SEO is geo actually, it's only, search engine is only the Google that most people go to. So that the way the content is produced is to, satisfy the biases that the platforms have created. So it is for engagement, we'll create content which is more engaging. So that's why it's like a loop where, we are trying to break out of it, but it doesn't work like that.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. So we're out of time, unfortunately. Our AI in the corner has told us that we need to get off stage. Do we have 2 minutes for a quick, no? Yeah, okay, so last question to all of you, and let's make it quick. Crystal ball out 2020. What does media in 2020 look like? Are we friends with technology? Are we foes? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Just your quick predictions, please.
Yeah, I think we'll be a step ahead predicting monetization models for media using tech.
This is wishful thinking, but I think technology in the newsroom will stop being the other. There'll be technologists embedded in the newsrooms and will be doing journalistic work, but just producing it through technology.
Yeah, I mean, I just hope we are friends, because otherwise we won't have content on Google search. But I genuinely I agree that the monetization models are going to change, right? And that is already changing. And so that's one, and obviously there'll be new things like voice. We just don't know how is voice going to get, and so that's going to be another interesting thing to watch out. Yeah.
I think Bill Gates had said you overestimate what changes in 2 years and underestimate what changes in a decade. So I don't think by 2020, which is just a year away, anything major will change. But I think everything changes by 2029 or something like that.
So it's like technology will continue to be enabler, and that's again, like as you said, wishful thinking. They would help to generate better content, unbiased content. Added to that, the better gratification to the consumers by use of, say, like from print, we moved to radio, to television, to digital, now to AR, wherein you could feel what is happening around. That's what I would feel.
As long as we don't have automated news readers, I think we should all be good.
Yeah,
thank you.
Readers are there.
Thank you, everyone. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you, panel. You guys have been excellent. Thanks.